Why don't you introduce yourself to the audience?
Hello, audience. My name is Qassem Naim, aka Q, and I look after data and tech at FCB.
Thanks, Q. I wanted you to say your name first because I've always been wondering about how to pronounce your first name. I'm Peter Vegas. I'm one of the ECDs at FCB, and I work like what, spitting distance from your desk?
Yeah, mate, like a good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I've been in advertising a long time, and data guys haven't been.
Oh.
So you're like a new department, really. Well, you are actually a new department.
Yeah. How long have we been running together now at FCB? 4 years, I think.
Oh, it seems it's been wonderful. It seems like a lifetime.
Absolutely wonderful.
And goodness.
I know. And I think that newness is what brings us here today, if I'm not mistaken.
The newness of data or data. See, I don't even know what it's called yet, whether it's data or data.
Actually, the perceived newness, really, right? Because if you think about data, they used to just call them numbers guys.
Yeah.
It wasn't actually like data, but since we started calling it data, now it's new again, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, look, see, I'm always, my kind of, as a advertising creative, my cynical bullshit radar goes, the setting is very, very low. So with the whole world of data and stuff as being the next big thing, so you always, like when you've been in advertising a long time, you see lots of next big things come along, and you're always a little bit cynical. And so what I found really interesting is as the world of data has become more useful, just seeing where it lands and how it fits. And in much the same way that the world of the online world, blew up 20 years ago, and then it was massively overhyped, and then kind of settled back, and we found a useful way to use
exactly what I was thinking about, right? The rise of digital and the fall of digital is big data, then it was machine learning, then it was AI, and ultimately, I'd agree and say it's all bullshit, right? Like I think we've had this yarn, but when you think about,
I think the hype is but I think because numbers don't lie.
Numbers don't lie, and they're important, right? You can use them to sell ideas, justify greater work, like keep things moving and find unique insight. But the concept, like, remember when we've done those reviews of all the Data and Creativity Awards, and you see what wins, and they're just good ideas that happen to like wrap some data around the execution or the thing, right? Like, what we think about the painting, who's the artist? Rembrandt, Rembrandt. And in the last Rembrandt, they like had this cool idea to like generate what the next Rembrandt would have looked like if he hadn't died. And then they were able to use data and technology to do it, but like it was the idea that was cool and strong, right? And there's like a lot of those types of examples where, like the same with the JFK one. It was like they wanted to recreate JFK's speech that he was gonna make before he got shot. So they had the script, and then they used all the voice data from his previous speeches to generate that one in his own words, but all of these executions and things that come out, even the ones out of our network largely, look at the concept of kind of a great, strong, creative idea that's executed through data and tech in some kind of cute way, potentially. But like the core of the idea wasn't the data and tech, right? Like data and tech is very much a means to an end.
I think, what's happened in my naive looking at it through the creative lens is that as technology has enabled us to gather much more data, much more effectively, and as that's become more possible, as it has more possibilities, we can use it in more interesting ways, and that's where I think often, and it's kind of like in this, I kind of go back to like the internet being invented. You have the possibilities of this technology, and there's you get some visionaries who can see how it can be used in the future, but there's always a time to catch up. But then it just takes the worker ants time to work out, okay, how can I use this effectively? And I think, what I've found really interesting, for me, I kind of break down the world of data into two pockets for me, or two areas. There's really interesting data that I can get access to help me sell an idea or a campaign. So for instance, I can go, we can go to you and go, look, we've got this theory that there's a whole lot of older people that are having that are water safety, at risk in the water and stuff like that, and we can back that up. So that's the one kind. Then I think the other really interesting thing is these days is where you can have access to data which you can weave into your idea to help make a point. And I mean, I probably can't think of an example of that one straight off the top of my head, but I will later on.
Yeah, of course.
And I think that's what's really interesting, that using, but you say, none of it matters unless you have at the heart of it, you have an interesting idea.
Yeah.
You know, because otherwise, what is it like? Boring data is just like dull statistics, isn't it?
Most data, like right? And like when people often talk about data, they mean stats. We want stats. Stats to justify a creative idea, stats to do this, stats to tell my boss how good a job I've done, like whatever it is, it's people looking, and what's that line? The same around, like, don't use data and insight like a drunk person uses a lamppost for support rather than illumination.
You know what, and you make it, and I think that's probably, then that's where, and say on the creative side, it gets looked at a little, kind of, subjectively sometimes, because I think you're right. The access to numbers can be used to help reduce risk.
Yeah.
So the risk of a creative idea.
Yeah.
And that's all, and we see that all the time, right? And we see, the advertising business is risky because that classical quote about, the guy, I know half my marketing budget works, just don't know which half. Using data and statistics to try and reduce the risk of your idea not working. But the problem with that, what comes with that is you end up doing ideas that aren't
risk
interesting.
Yeah,
right? Which is like 90% of the stuff you see on TV.
Yeah. But that's the other side of that is when I did a preso a couple years back and I talked about data as the last bastion of creativity, in the sense that, like, I don't know, there's no surprise with risk-averse businesses and everything having to be measurable and everything else. Like, it's been harder in a lot of corporate environments and things to, like, do really bold, exciting, creative work.
Yep.
But if you can prove that it works, right, through measurement and whatever else, that's like your arm, you're just putting bows in the quiver to then go in and sell bolder creative ideas.
The creative department will go to that every time. And I think what I found really interesting the last few years, especially like, working closer with you guys, well, especially because they made you guys come up and sit with us, so we had to talk to you anyway.
We sat together and then you got rid of us. And
but then, eventually you came and sat with us and we talked to you and found out you were okay.
Yeah.
But what I think is encouraging the creative teams to actually go to you guys as a starting point to asking questions that you guys can then come back with answers in number form. And I'll give you an example. Actually, I was talking before about the second form of using data to create ideas.
Yeah.
So a beautiful example I thought last year that Melina and David Shirley did for the Swim Reaper, where looking at the data of where people had drowned and the statistics of where people had drowned on beaches, were able to create, what is it, like an algorithm or something that could then work out where more likely there were to be more dangerous beaches were going to be based on the weather conditions.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fantastic, because that's taking raw numbers and turning it into something really interesting that was then turned, and the Swim Reaper turned it into this drowning machine that could predict. And you go, that's a great example of taking numbers, being able to have the wherewithal to translate those numbers into facts, and then turn it into an interesting idea.
Yeah.
And I see that, the marriage of data and creativity. Mate,
that was beautiful,
fantastic.
right? And because it was intrinsic to the idea.
Yeah.
It helped define the content based on, because the whole predictive algorithm around where drownings were most likely to happen. It was also had really rich data around the types of activities that were involved in the drownings and everything else.
That when you refer to rich data,
Rich.
You actually make numbers sound. My father was an actuary, so I grew up with all about numbers, and he was very disappointed with me because I went into advertising. And but when you talk about rich data, I just go,
rich?
I'm not quite sure what it is, but it just sounds like I want to sit down and talk more about it.
And unique, right? Because getting a hold of that data, it was
it's
actually
unique
quite
data,
cool.
like
it
rich.
was unique, rich data that we were able to find a novel way to apply to solving this problem. And man, but it was so much fun. And that's the kind of stuff that also, that's why my team and our data and tech people work in this industry and in this building, you know what I mean, is to push those kinds of ideas. Of course, there's some standard reporting and BAU that people can get across, but the concept of being able to find something truly innovative and interesting and a unique angle on something to drive that one through. And it was cool, right? Because we were able to target all the media around the zones, schedule the post timing based on when a drowning was likely to occur, all this interesting, really moneyballed effectively the Swim Reaper's job for him in terms of reaping smarter, not harder, and it was quite cool. Yeah.
Oh, it's brilliant. To me, that was the perfect marriage of our departments and the power that you can do, where you can put those two together and have something that is really interesting and really useful.
Yeah.
So I'm all for that. More of that.
More of that. Yeah.
But we should actually. I'm not sure where this film. We probably shouldn't share any of our upcoming ideas because we don't want to give away too much stuff. But
perhaps
speak in code. Could we say code numbers? Some kind of number code.
Binary. Pretty good.
Zeros and ones.
Yeah. And then the whole concept of bring a data dude to work day, I thought was pretty cool.
That's So that was we had well, as if it's like the audience watching us. So the creative department had bring a data dude to bring a data dad to work, and each Monday one of the creative teams would have to go and talk to one of the data guys and bring them in and introduce them, and they'd explain what they do. And it was you guys are literally a mine of information.
Oh, mate,
number themed information.
Number themed usually, and it's always funny to me. People not knowing what we do. I can't, like, for the longest time, I still probably, if you ask most people, like, what is Q, what do data and tech do? People are like, data.
Oh, absolutely.
You know? What do I do, Pete? You know what
Mate, in my naive, kind of humble, kind of layman's terms, I've sussed out that you guys have access to mountains and mountains of data, and what you do is you analyze it into streams that are kind of relevant to our clients and problems we're trying to solve, I think.
I like that.
You translate numbers into stuff that, you know, is interesting.
Translation is actually a cool one. That's kind of what I've talked about for, like, I feel like where I landed in the industry was kind of 1 foot on, like, the business and kind of creative and marketing side, and 1 foot on this data and technology side. And as it's become the new hip thing in town and everybody's quite into it, it's made for quite an interesting piece, because generally you get loser data guys, no offense, that don't know how to talk business, don't know how to talk creative, don't know how to, like, stretch beyond a very functional and technical understanding, you know, and that's the risk averse, you know, like slow, very kind of processive side of data and technology, if you will, right?
Yeah.
And then on the other side, you have, like, where it meets road, you know, like rubber meets road, and it's actually applied to solving problems and doing whatever else, and bridging those two things.
But I think, it's kind of like, I think the guys and the girls that you've brought in, they're obviously inspired, but you've kind of worked out, you know, you've seen how data can help, you know, the industry and the creative department, and you've worked out, you've kind of become a go-between and worked out how to kind of speak both languages, and then that hopefully brings in more people.
Yeah, man.
That, you know,
and it's fun, right? It's like way cooler, and the concept of what we can achieve and deliver, right? Because data and technology, again, means to an end, an enabler, but the concept, like, your creative can come to life in so many different ways through data and technology now, because that's the other side of it. You know, we talk about the data piece and the insights or information or things that we can apply to our approach to solving problems. And then there's the, like, tech piece. Part of it, the boring part, is automating stuff, which we do for a lot of clients, right? And we make manual tasks that take a long time automated and easier, fine. But then the, like, how you can amplify an idea through a different channel, or, you know, like, reach different audiences with different messages, or, like, do all those types of things, like it's again an enabler, but the means of executing beyond linear, you know, 60-second TV narrative or whatever else, right? You can bring so much creativity through your use of the tech, like, to your point, and kind of how you hack stuff together to create something really compelling and interesting for consumers.
And not all data people speak as fast as you, eh?
Nah.
That's one thing I learned.
Yeah.
Actually, have you always spoken that fast?
I think so, and I walk pretty fast as well.
You actually do. You do everything quite fast. So is that always, like, you're always into the numbers and stuff since you were quite young?
No, I guess, you know, it's just because I was moving so quick, I was able to jump on this trend before some other people did.
Right. What was that title? You had a guy working for you. Was he a data scientist?
Yeah.
That was. I thought that's fantastic. You start giving people interesting titles like that.
Yeah.
Then you are going to attract more interesting people.
Yeah. Unfortunately, data scientist is now one of those boring, trendy roles. But the concept, if you just looked at data scientist outside the, like, what it means now in corporate culture, it's a really cool title.
Right.
Now that's the AI ML guy. It's the guy we want to make a model to tell us how much money we're going to lose this year. You know, like, it's very much a functional type of role that applies science to data in order to do, like, predictive modeling.
Very actuarial, that kind of stuff.
Very actuarial.
Yeah, it reminds me of being 14 again and falling asleep at the table.
Yeah.
Listening to those stories.
But the opportunity, I do think I have science background as well, a little bit biased.
Oh, really?
But yeah.
You look good in the lab coat.
Thanks, mate. I rocked a lab coat for a while.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
Microbiology, medical tech. It was swimmingly exciting, but
medical tech.
Yeah, but science is missing in marketing now, and I think that's part of the problem. I was doing a workshop for the MA a little bit ago around like intro to science for marketers, and it wasn't data science. This is how you go about modeling and stuff. It was like, how do you scientifically approach a problem like marketing, particularly when we get into the like performance-based stuff, right? You know, in that whole, the wrong and short of it has been the yarn lately, but you know, there's kind of been two camps in advertising, right? And there's the long-term, i.e. like brand TVCs, and then the short-term, like banner guys, you know, and like those have been largely the two camps of how like marketing split out. But in reality, like, we know you can't do that, and you know, we'd like try and bring that cohesive kind of.
Well, that's one of the conundrums, you know, like as technologies come along, it's enabled you, and this is where, you know, one of the problems that, you know, data can be used for good, but it can also be a tool for bad. And it's the thing, because with data can get so specific now, and then the world of technology has come along, and we've had this, you know, we've had this weird mix of, on the one hand, these days we're talking about how storytelling is really, really important, but we've invented the 6-second bumper ad, and you know, like, and who knows how short they'll get, and it's really hard to tell a story in 6 seconds. So there's this kind of backwards and forwards fight between that, and there's the instant results you get from online. You know, I remember when banner advertising first came along, and we were told, you know, for about the 4th time in my career, I've heard, this is it, everything else will be over now. Why would you ever want to do any other ad? Because you can serve this up to the exact people you want. It will appear right in front of them and they will click on it. And so all other forms of advertising are now dead. And you go, weirdly, funnily enough, it turned out that wasn't true. Just like direct mail and letterbox turned out not to be the be all and end all. But I think, you know, as this new abilities have come in, and the new, you know, to do things faster and better, we've then taken, I think what happens is, we take them and we filter them down, and we keep the bits that are useful, and then we move on. But those old, you know, the finding this mix between, you know, doing short-term turnaround stuff and long-term brand building is, you know, that fight's still there, and it's going to keep going.
It is. I mean, I guess the broad acknowledgement in the market lately of the fact that there's a role for both and that they should work together. Huge.
There's no absolutes. Isn't it the same in life? There's no absolutes. You know, if I was the guy, like, you know, it'd be amazing if you're like from the early '80s and you'd been frozen in time and come back. You wouldn't expect to see any vinyl around, would you? Because in theory, right? Remember the CD came along. That's it. Vinyl was everything's gone after. There is no absolutes, you know, except in sci-fi movies where you see it's an absolute version of the future. But and I think it's the same, in our advertising world. I think as well though, advertising's moved into this arms race, and this is where I think, you know, that the data side of it, you guys have been slapped into agencies a little bit like the way the direct marketing arm was, where it's the new magical tool that the agencies have that is going to change the future. And I think sometimes they can be used, those powers can be used wrong or misunderstood. And you know, I think it's trying to find, which I think is really interesting upstairs, what we're trying to do on the second floor, find that, how do we work? How do we play with our new friends? It's a bit like, you know, when your mum would say that you had to have the friends over for the kids from the new neighbours, and you know, that you didn't really know, and it's like, how are we play? And they came over to play. You know, you could be the weird kid from overseas, come to my house to play in the afternoon. But then it turned out we all had the same interests. We got on really, really well.
Exactly.
It's just like that, isn't it?
Yeah, I like how
literally playing
we've done it as well, right? Because 4 years, right? Been here and like building it out, and I think FCB approached it a little earlier than most in terms of creative agencies kind of really leaning in and trying to figure out how to play with data, but more organically as well, you know, like the way it grew. Like some other companies will like acquire just like a data company and throw it in the group and be like, that's part of the group now. And it doesn't quite have the same vibe.
Well, those force fit things that, you know, especially you acquire a company that's already got its own thing and its own ways of working. I think the way you were kind of came in and then brought a few people, and we've all just kind of, sized each other out. And I think that whole thing, I mean, for me, it's like, I know for Lisa and I upstairs, has always been working with other departments, like the same with PR and different departments just in media, and sitting down and going, how can we work together? So what's the stuff you guys are doing that we can kind of work, you know, and my favourite projects now are the ones where it's like there'll be 6 or 7 different skills all sitting around the table, and you go, because it's a real alchemy of like magical, you know, making weird experiments.
Yeah,
you know, it doesn't always work, but man, when it does, it's like
Exactly.
so much bigger. And that's why I love compared to the old days of advertising was very linear when I got into it. You know, you either did a TV ad or a press ad or a radio ad, and it was, you know, never the twain shall meet. The logos might match up and stuff. But I think now, we've got the power to do way more interesting stuff, and you know.
And the mixing and mingling.
Yeah, and that's a lot of that is thanks the internet and the use of data, and you know.
Data and data.
Yeah.
But
at some point, I imagine we're going to have to agree on just the one pronunciation for it.
Data.
Data?
Well, I thought we sorted this. It's not data nor data. It's data.
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 We should make that. Should we make that an FCB proprietary thing?
Yeah.
Data.
Data. Hashtag GSD. And we go from there. Get shit done.
We'll get a logo done this afternoon.
Yeah, I mean,
that's fantastic.
Thanks, mate. And any other final points you'd like to get across?
Creative people are by their nature very curious, and I think you're always looking for new friends to play with and new people, and I think especially modern creative people, the modern creative teams, it's not just 2 people, you know, a writer and art director. It's like your conduits and sponges, and you want to pull in as many people as you can into your big creative gangbang, and you end up with really amazing stuff. You know, so
and contrary to popular belief, most data people like new friends too, or at least are so frustrated by the stale, linear, corporate approach to data and technology that if you give them an opportunity or you take the jump and engage with some creative weirdos, you'll end up finding something really cool and probably more exciting.
I would argue there are more creative weirdos in your department than mine.
Yeah,
like,
I'd take that.
They're like...
Hell yeah.
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 A real odd assortment of people like yourself.
Indeed. Well,
hey,
Mr. Vegas.
That was great, mate. That went really well,
Such
didn't
a
it?
pleasure.
Yeah, I'll see you on the second floor. Okay. And cut.